it's being reported that the Renault Duster might be coming back to India in January 2026. And this is interesting because Renault as a brand has been struggling in India. I mean, they don't have the brand reputation that a lot of the other popular brands have. And they need something to really, well, compete. And I think this Duster could do it. Now, I'm guessing that the Duster will be competing with the Creta and the Grand Vitara, Seltos, that segment. But can it actually compete with those cars? Because when you think about the other Renault car, the Kiger, now price wise, that was a great car, just in terms of price and a lot of the specs it had. But in my opinion, it had one serious flaw. Apart from the brand, people not being confident with the brand, that held it back, and that was the engine. The base models, the lower end models, had an engine that put out 71 or 72 horsepower, and that much power just wasn't enough. And when you look at that car and you go try to get the more powerful engine, then the price goes up because the more powerful engine, you have to go a few variants above the base model to get that engine. And at that point, you're kind of competing with a lot of other established brands and their cars. And that's not something that Renault could really do with the Kiger. And that was the problem with the Kiger. Now, if they offered the more powerful engine a lower down the line, sure, it would have been great, but it didn't happen. And I'm guessing maybe it has something to do with cost effectiveness. I mean, they want to compete really well and to get so many features to consumers that they compromise on the engine, which I think is a big mistake. I think the engine should have been put first. But anyway, now the Duster, well, the Duster has a big job to do, especially considering the segment that it might be competing in. Because this segment, the mid-sized SUV segment, I feel like it's the new compact SUV segment. Now, a few years ago, the compact SUV segment was huge. That was the segment that everyone was so focused on. That was the segment that everyone had so many great cars, and it was heavily competitive, and people loved the cars in that segment. But I feel like the market's starting to move on a bit, and the mid-size SUV segment is the new big segment. With the Grand Vitara, the Creta, the Seltos, the Hyryder, it's a big segment. Now, how can Renault compete with all these big cars that are already established, and a lot of them are no-brainers for people when they're considering buying a car? Well, I think they have to do the basics like being cost effective. They have to place the Duster at least 1 lakh or hopefully 2 lakhs below the competition in terms of price. The base starting price, I think, should be really competitive. And even when you go up to the options, still it needs to be competitive. Not just make the base price really cheap, but strip it out of features. And as soon as you get some of the features, then the price goes up really high. That's not gonna work. So they need to price it competitively. And I feel like the Duster, in order to compete effectively, I think they should bring the car out with enough features, and if you spec it to a point where you get the decent amount of stuff you want, and you have to be able to, I think, purchase it at on road at least 14 lakhs. Now, that is a bit of a big ask, but Renault needs to do this because they need to compete. They need to win the segment, and price cutting at the same time giving the features that people want and giving the quality levels that people expect from a mid-size SUV. It has to be the way to go. So yeah, I don't know whether Renault does this or not, I don't know. But from what I'm guessing are the engine options, I don't think that would be a huge problem. Now, I don't know what the power figures of the engines or the engines might actually be, but I'm guessing that one of the engines might be a 1.3 liter four cylinder engine, and the other one would be a 1.2 liter turbo petrol with mild hybrid tech. I think that would probably be the higher engine, and the 1.3 liter petrol would be the lower end. Now, whether the 1.3 liter petrol is a turbocharged engine or not, I'm not sure. I think it might be a turbocharged engine. And the 1.2 liter three cylinder engine with the hybrid tech, that'll probably be the more expensive engine. So I'm guessing that the 1.3 liter turbo petrol would be the car that comes in the base model. And well, I'm wondering how much power that engine can produce. It would be interesting, because in that segment I think you need the base engine to have at least, well, this is going to be a mid-size SUV, so to have adequate power, I think it's going to need 120 horsepower or something, and I hope it does. But I am worried that it might end up being a 100 horsepower engine or something, and if that's the case, then this car might end up in the same position as the Kiger did, with an underpowered engine, considering the size of the car. Now, 100 horsepower, I don't know, maybe it would work and people would be okay with it. Now, the Grand Vitara, I think that has a 100 and something horsepower engine too for the base models. But that's a Maruti and the brand's established, so people are might be willing to put up with it if it gets a fuel efficiency or something. But Renault doesn't have that luxury. They need to compete heavily, and if the car's underpowered, people might be hesitant concerning the brand and all that. So yeah, Renault are in a tricky position, and so which is why I think the pricing is gonna be really important. I really hope that they bring it in a way that with the decent options you can you can compete with the competition by pricing it 2 lakhs below it, while giving a good quality interior and all that stuff, the basics covered, which I think it will be. From what I know about the new Duster, I feel like it's decent enough for the segment. And yeah, the engine has a decent amount of power. I think it could compete, even though it does have a huge, it has a lot of work to do. But yeah, I think pricing is gonna be really important in this car, and we'll have to wait and see what happens, because with the way things are going, Renault needs this thing to succeed and to be a big competitor, because without it, I don't know how long Renault's gonna be able to stay in India considering the competition, and you need a lot of sales to compete. So yeah, let's wait and see what happens if the car launches in January. So